G'day guys, my name's Tristan. I'm the Head of Service Excellence here at TAS, and this is Yash, one of my RPA leads.
Good day, everyone.
We're going to take you through a webinar of robotic process automation, and we hope you find it informative. Well, thanks everybody for joining us here today. We're going to take you through a demonstration of the TAS robotic process automation. Before we get into the demonstration, we're going to ground you in some of our framework, and we're going to take you through some of the why. Why is it important for you to consider robotic process automation and how it can add value to your business? So today we're going to take you through what is RPA, or what is robotic process automation, what are the objectives, and how do we approach implementing RPA. From there, we'll take you through a real-world example and some RPA use cases. We'll then take you through how we select process and how you can consider process selection internally. And then I'll hand over to Yash and we'll take you through a real-life demonstration of a robot doing its thing. And then afterwards, we'll then talk to you about what you can do and what you can consider within your organization and how you can engage with TAS. So what is RPA? In 2018, RPA was the fastest growing segment in the global enterprise market year on year. And where we're finding that RPA is providing a significant amount of benefit is in both the finance area, but also in other areas such as HR. And these are areas that are traditionally very admin intensive and very process laborious. And another area that RPA can be very beneficial is when you have multiple systems that are considered legacy systems. So these are systems that may not be easy to upgrade or may not be financially viable to upgrade. And RPA can sit across these legacy systems and perform the interfacing for you. Now, TAS in particular does have a strong reputation and a strong history in the financial services sector. And we believe that leveraging from that understanding, we can bring to you more value through robotic process automation on top of that. And what that basically means is we know finance, we understand the industry, and we believe that we are best placed to be able to help you on your automation journey because of that. In terms of objectives, the main things that we're trying to aim for in the robotic process automation space is about improving output quality. And this is about reducing the number and severity of errors. At the end of the day, a lot of these processes are being run by humans, and because of that, there is a margin for error. A robot, however, if it's programmed correctly, can operate without error. So what you will see at the end of your RPA journey is a process that's able to be executed correctly first time and every time. If you have a process that in particular can be severely impacted by an error, this is where a robot can help to stop that from happening and to stop the flow and effect as a result of that. Another key area that RPA helps to address is around improving the efficiency of the process. And this is about reducing the cycle time or reducing the total elapsed time of the process. So where a human may take an hour to execute the process manually, a robot may be able to produce it within a few minutes. So the end-to-end time from start to finish of the process is reduced. And that means that you're able to turn processes around faster. Another really key important aspect of improving efficiency is not just automating everything, because it may not make sense to automate every step, but there will be times when it makes sense to eliminate actions and activities within the process. And that's one of the key discussion points that we would have with you and would be asking, do you still need to execute this step? Is it still required? Is it still adding value? And if not, let's remove it from the process so that we don't unnecessarily spend time automating something that's no longer required. The flow and effect from those two is then around reducing costs. So because we've streamlined the process, because we've sped up the process, and because we've eliminated qualitative issues with the process, we're then able to reduce the costs, both in terms of executing the process, but also in terms of the impact that would happen if the process were to have a quality issue. The other important aspect about RPA is helping to provide you with visibility of those costs. And even if you weren't to go through the whole RPA journey, working with TAS at the beginning to define your process and to put in place effort estimates and understanding where some of your bottlenecks are, that activity alone is powerful because it will give you visibility of where your costs are as far as the process is concerned. So to give you an example, what we would do is we would have a look at your process and we would do some very simple lean analysis where we would measure how long a process will take, how much effort is applied to each step, how long are people waiting and being idle as they wait for a system to perform a certain transaction. We would then bring that visibility of cost to you so that you can understand the return on investment of automating versus remaining and having the activity done manually. Probably a more powerful aspect of RPA, although often less tangible and harder to measure, it's about empowering your process stakeholders. And what we mean by that is we help you to eliminate tedious and repetitive tasks. The net result from there is that your people are then able to focus on more cognitive tasks, more meaningful tasks, more tasks that add value to your organisation, and ideally tasks that would increase the satisfaction of your staff. If you can imagine an operator spending hours a day performing the same repetitive task, that may not return to them the same level of satisfaction as being able to spend more time on driving out improvements or establishing relationships or focusing on much more interesting tasks. So that's really what RPA is trying to deliver there to you and your stakeholders as part of empowerment. And then finally, as alluded to in some earlier commentary, one of the other objectives of RPA is about helping you to improve and understand your knowledge. So at the beginning of the RPA journey, what we will do is we will work with you to document your process and establish a current state. And that will, in and of itself, help you to understand your organisation, how it operates, and it will then empower you to make the right decisions as far as process automation is concerned. So how does TAS help you on this journey? We have a very simple framework, and that simple framework is divided up into 3 key phases. The first phase is about defining what you need. And in the process world, we have a very simple saying: if you start right, you finish right. So what that means is that we work with you to have an initial engagement, and that could just be a phone call or a workshop, whatever is appropriate. From there, we work with you to identify processes. We work with you to assess and analyse those processes. If you don't have any documentation in place, that's okay. We can sit down with you and we can help you pull together that documentation and document the current state. From there, based on all of that information, we will prepare a return on investment type statement so that you can be informed on whether it makes sense to go to automation or not. Once we get through that piece of work, you will then receive some commercial documentation and you can then decide whether you want to continue the RPA journey. From there, once we have defined requirements with you and once we have documented the current state and everybody has agreed on what success looks like, we then work towards the enablement phase. And that's where we take all of that good work, all of that hard work at the beginning, and we apply our framework to build, test, and deploy your RPA solution. As part of build, we have a very clear coding framework or coding standards to make sure that the way that we build the robots is according to best practice and according to industry standard. We then perform our own internal testing, and then we open the testing out to our customers to perform user acceptance testing. And that's really where you're able to validate that what's being built meets your original requirements and is delivering the original value that has been described in the define phase. Once testing is complete and you've signed off the product, we then follow strict and clear change management principles to deploy your robots and your processes into production. And then there is a period of early life support. And the way that we deliver early life support is scalable because not all processes are the same and not all processes are equal. If you have a highly transactional process, one that runs once a day or multiple times a day, we might have early life support over, say, a 4 or 5 day period where we can make sure that the process is executing correctly. If you have a less frequent process, one that might have a transaction, say, once a month, then early life support would look more like watching 3 process execution fully from end to end. And that would be, say, over a 3-month period. So we do try to scale that early life support based on the needs of you and of your process so that you can be comfortable and you can be confident that once it's been handed over, the process is delivering what you've asked for, and it's delivering it error-free, and it's achieving all of those objectives that we spoke about earlier. Once we've achieved enablement, from there it's a case of sustainability and operations. And what this means is that we wrap around all of those expert practices around ITIL and leveraging from service management. So this means that if the robot were to have an error for some unforeseen reason, then our robots are able to communicate back to our service management technology, and we're able to handle those exceptions. And then we follow our standard escalation processes to work with you to have it addressed. We also work with you as part of continual service improvement to identify any future enhancements. We know that together we won't always be 100% right the first time, and sometimes it's not feasible for it to be 100% right the first time. So what that means is we would work with you to identify further improvements as part of operations. We also provide a self-service portal through our ServiceNow platform, and that enables you to log further enhancements, but also to track the progress of any incidents or requests. And you can see that we leverage from a number of expert practices underneath each of those phases. And this helps to give you confidence that the way that we are operating are using tried and tested methods that have been proven day in, day out in the industry. There's a really important quote here, and it touches on some important aspects. It says here, putting the right people in the right job and having them perform the right activities is absolutely critical for driving superior performance for a company. All companies have people executing tedious, routine tasks that could be more efficiently done using automation. This in turn would free them up for doing value-add activities or tasks where human intelligence is imperative. And that's really at the crux and at the heart of the TAS robotic process automation service. It's about empowering people to focus on activities that not just add more value to your organisation, but they're also more interesting. It's about allowing humans to be human, to focus on the things that we do best, going out and establishing relationships, and speaking with people and helping to drive out and identify new improvements, as opposed to having them perform more tedious tasks sitting behind a computer and typing away for hours on end. Take a look at the picture that's in front of you on the screen. And what you're seeing here is you're seeing from the early 1900s a policeman who is standing in the middle of an intersection. And you can see here that he is directing traffic using a manual signalling system. As you look at this screen, have a think about what are all the things that could possibly go wrong with the officer standing there, with vehicles probably weighing 1.5 tonne flying by, people on the sidewalk, visibility and light. And without thinking too hard, you could probably identify where and how this process could possibly fail. And when we look at that picture, we can identify just a few aspects quickly that might go wrong. As far as the offer is concerned, he may be fatigued. If he's having to do this for hours on end every day, he can get tired. It's a health hazard having him stand there in the middle of the intersection with all of these cars going by in multiple directions. The activity is laborious, it's monotonous. I imagine it wouldn't be very enjoyable standing there days on end directing traffic. And it's prone to error. If the officer is not facing in the right direction, he may miss a car coming by. Or if he focuses on one side of the intersection for longer than the other, then it could cause build-ups. As far as the traffic is concerned, it's inefficient. There's less visibility when compared to our current system of LEDs that are raised high above cars where everybody can see the lights and everybody knows what's going on. Being able to see the old manual system may be more challenging. And there's a higher risk of accidents as a result of that. And this is what we mean by qualitative errors in the process that can then cause flow-on effects. Then finally, at a government level, at a system or at a council level, the council would have less or no overall control of the flow of traffic. That police officer has control of the flow of traffic in his immediate area. But if you can imagine a CBD like Sydney or New York, these particular places, can you imagine a police officer standing at multiple intersections? There's no, or there would be very little coordination across the CBD, and that means the overall flow of traffic through the CBD is hampered. There's also scalability challenges. Again, if you can imagine all the intersections across all the cities and having a police officer on every single intersection, it's not scalable, it's expensive, and it further increases the risk. And finally, it means that there's less oversight on other forms of crime or traffic offences. So whilst we would have all of the police force focusing on directing traffic, they're not able to focus on more value-add activities such as following up on, say, murders or abuse or other forms of crime like shoplifting and that sort of thing. You can see how even in a very basic illustration like that, the automated system that we have today with our LED traffic lights, even a very simple comparison like that, you can see how the automation has added value to the police force. It's added value to the overall flow of traffic, not just in a CBD, but across whole states. And it then means that it adds value at a government and a community level. And that's just a very simple illustration of how automation can empower you as a business. So as mentioned, it's about removing manual, repetitive, laborious tasks, enabling humans to do what we do best, and allowing us to perform cognitive activities. We can be inventive, we can be creative, we can solve problems, building and nurturing relationships, and ultimately feeling a sense of job satisfaction that we're actually contributing in a way that is meaningful for us to the business, but then to the broader community around us. Now, there are a number of ways that RPA can assist, and there are a number of use cases that RPA can be applied to. And this is just a very small example of where RPA can add value. But we thought it important to touch on some of these examples because they are key to the finance sector and other sectors that overlap with these types of processes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Yash. Yash reports to me as my RPA lead or RPA specialist. Yash has a wealth of experience with RPA, but also within the finance and industry sectors. And Yash is going to take you through just a few use cases on how RPA has been applied and how they may be beneficial to you. So over to you, Yash, and thanks.
Thank you, Tristan. Can't imagine a world without traffic signals. So the point over here is automation has been since decades in our lives, everywhere. So why can't we think about automation of our business processes? Here are some use cases typical to RPA, starting from simpler ones like data entry, which involves copying data from one system to other system or from Excel, emails to other system. Then batch processing, which has standard commands to run in Unix or any other system. Then we have got reports, which can be reconciliation report, APRA report, internal auditing, due diligence, which could involve checking sanctions against a particular company or checking if a person is politically exposed person or not. This could involve external software like Veda or Equifax reports or even Google search. Gathering data from various sources is another complex, medium complex process you could have. This involves gathering data from, for example, in insurance industry, gathering data from insurance applications, policy information, customer information while an agent is processing claims. Finance processing involves invoices and receipts. So imagine if you have hundreds of receipts and invoices coming from different vendors every single day, and if you have to copy data from those invoices like invoice amount, invoice text, ABN numbers, and all the other details into your finance system. Human resource processes that involves member onboarding or employee onboarding or customer onboarding. So these are the typical RPA use cases, but nevertheless, there are thousands of other use cases. And what I'm gonna do is I'll deep dive into one such use case where I was involved in my previous company. And this is called a daily APRA report. We'll just read out a problem statement. We'll go through the approach that our RPA team followed, and we'll also cover some benefits that were realized. So the issue over there was there was a finance department employee who used to send out consolidated to APRA every single day. He had to send out that report every single day before 1 p.m. And it used to take about 2.5 hours every morning to do such repetitive and manual work. This involved consolidating data from 2 different finance systems, running macros in Excel and Access, and if I can remember, there were about 15 or 16 macros, waiting for other team to finish their tasks, collecting data and drafting emails, and again sending out report to APRA. So naturally, if you imagine that deadlines were being missed sometimes due to various reasons, waiting for other team or undefined errors, which had potential financial and reputation implication for the company. And naturally, employee also felt stressed every day. So how we approached this is we didn't jump into RPA solution directly. We analyzed the process, we tried to optimize it and remove any unnecessary step. Then we came to the RPA approach, where we checked the number of steps involved in this whole process, number of system interfaces, and we termed this process as medium complex. Next, the ROI was calculated, and it was projected to start and grow from 5th month onwards after implementation. With the process owner, after that, we held 3 different workshops of 2 hours and conducted the solution. We went through the process, we mapped out the as-is and to-be process, and we defined the whole solution. The automated solution from start to end was implemented and tested within 8 weeks. And after that, this is how the bot would work. Every single day on a scheduled time of 9 a.m., the robot would kick off. It will wait for any input files which were yet to be received by midnight data warehouse jobs or from any other team, after which the robot would perform the similar tasks as the process owner would do previously. For example, running macros or collecting data and drafting emails. And finally, the robot would consolidate the report and send it out to process owner. The process owner would check that for its correctness and send it out to APRA. Now, if you would have already imagined how the number of benefits that were realized by this RPA approach. So on the right-hand side, there are some benefits which were captured in first 3 months. So in first 3 months, there were 0 deadlines missed. 97 out of 100 times the process ran successfully, and only 3 times where there were exception scenarios, the robot was able to capture the screenshot, the error message, and send it to the process owner for further processing. Overall, the process ran 20% faster, and wherever there were issues, they were faster to remediate. Now, naturally, the employee didn't have to stress about deadlines anymore, and the saved hours where employee used to work on this report every single day for 2 hours, he is now involved in more cognitive tasks and other projects where his decision making and strategies as well as past knowledge is required. So like this, as I said, there are thousands of other use cases, but the success lies in selecting the correct process and correct use case. So Tristan will go through some of the whys and hows of process selection for RPA.
Thanks, Yash. And I'm sure some of you listening to this who have some experience in the finance sector would be really resonating with that example that Yash took us through. And as Yash mentioned, there will be thousands of scenarios, thousands of processes that are potential candidates for automation. However, not all processes are made equal, and not all processes require automation. And it's important for us that as we work with you, that we take you through our process selection criteria, because it doesn't make sense for you to invest all of that time and all of that money if there's not going to be a return on investment for you. So how do you identify processes that are candidates for automation? And this is something that you can do within your own business to help prepare for your RPA journey. One of the first things that you should take a look at are identifying processes that result in faster benefit realization. And what this means is that when we automate the process for you, your return on investment is delivered to you faster. Secondly, you should consider processes that will result in a higher benefit realization. Sometimes that's about processes that are highly transactional and that will run very often throughout the day. Sometimes it may be about more complex processes, and while they may be not as transactional, the amount of effort that is applied to those activities could potentially be more expensive for your organization, and it makes sense to automate those first. You should consider processes that will result in lower failure rates. And what this means is where putting in place a robot will assist you in lowering those failure rates so that the chances of subsequent flow-on effects from a process failing are reduced. It's important that you consider processes that also have manageable risks. And what that also means is that it's important that you identify processes that, if they were to go wrong, the flow-on effect may be smaller in some cases compared to other processes. And it's important to start with some of those lower risk processes first. And the reason why we recommend that, and that doesn't mean that automation is not suitable for higher risk processes, but we recommend starting with these types of processes because they will then build confidence within your organization. If you're able to identify processes that have fast ROI, high ROI, and that will result in lower failure rates and are also low risk, this means that we can help you automate faster, but also help you to build confidence within your organization that robotics is something that is achievable and that adds value. And as part of that journey, we would encourage you to identify RPA champions, people who can work within your organization to help identify these processes, but also help to communicate the value of what's being achieved and why RPA is important for your business. So how do we go about this process selection? We have a few simple questions that you can take a look at internally perhaps as part of your business meetings. If you have daily stand-ups, you could inject it into those meetings to talk about this. The first thing that you should consider is the process rule-based. What this means is the process repeatable? Day in, day out, it's exactly the same steps, it's triggered at the same time of day or similar time of day perhaps. It has the same inputs, the same outputs, and it requires minimum human intervention. What this means is it requires minimum decision making where the robot can simply execute from start to finish as fast as it can go. The other aspect to consider when choosing an RPA process is whether it's digital or not digital, because this then affects the complexity of the automation process. For example, you might want to consider processes that are completely digital. So this might mean, for example, an online system where a customer fills in an online form and then passes that digital information to the robot. And this is generally considered less complex than with dealing with, say, processes that are triggered using a paper-based system. And whilst it's definitely possible to automate a paper-based system with the right scanning and input tools, inherently digital processes are less complex, and they would fit the bill for a process that would have faster benefit realization and higher benefit realization. Another area to consider is the frequency and how repetitive the process is. So it's about process volume. A process that runs, say, 100 times a day may be best served to be automated compared to a process that perhaps only runs once a year. So you would need to consider those types of things when identifying a process. And finally, another key area for you to consider is how stable your process is and how standard your process is. If you have a process that is constantly changing, if you have a process that is potentially changing within the next 6 to 12 months, it may not make sense to automate that particular process. And we wouldn't necessarily recommend that because it's not in your best interest to invest your resources to automate that. So we would help you working through this selection criteria to make sure that you are choosing the right processes that make sense to you. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand back to Yash, and Yash is now going to take you through a real-life demonstration of a robot. Now, I like to call this demonstration Beat the Bot. However, I do like how Yash phrases this as manual manager versus empowered employee. So what are you going to take us through today, Yash? How is this demonstration going to work? And I will remind you as your manager, sorry, to be gentle.
All right, so as you said, it is gonna be manual process for you.
Okay.
And it is gonna be automated process for me. So that's why I like to call it as manual manager versus empowered employee. So what I've done is I've charted out a process. So this is a very simplistic process involving 5 ABN numbers. You need to read those 5 ABN numbers.
Okay.
Go to the government ABN website,
Alright.
go through each, copy each ABN number and search that onto government website. Copy details like name, status, and registered location
Okay.
onto an Excel sheet and send out an email either to myself or you.
So I think I can handle that. It doesn't sound like the most interesting or fun
Yes.
task, but if I can just summarize, just to make sure that I understand correctly, you want me to basically find the details for 5 ABN numbers
Yes.
on the government ABN website.
Yeah.
You want me to put those details into Excel,
Yeah.
and then we're going to simulate emailing that onto someone such as a manager or a different department. Does
Yeah.
that sound about right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I want to see how much time you take and how
Okay.
much time this bot process that I've created takes.
So I think I can handle that. Doesn't sound too laborious, although I must admit if I had to do that 1,000 times, I'd probably get sick of it pretty quick, but let's give it a go.
I think so. All right.
Thanks.
Let's begin. All right, so what I've got is the UiPath Studio software, which allows you to make automation processes. So if I scroll down, these are the different components used to make the whole ABN processes, which I briefly talked about. So this robot or this automation process is gonna do the same thing as I mentioned. It's gonna open an Internet Explorer session. It will navigate to the government website. It will read the 5 ABN numbers which are in our shared drive in an Excel file. We'll grab the details like name, status, and location from the government website, dump that into Excel again, and send an email to myself. So did you understand, Tristan?
So that all sounds great. I've just got Excel and Chrome open, so surely I'll be faster than you. Yours sounded quite sort of complicated and involved, and maybe it's just my lack of understanding. So,
all right, so
I reckon I'm in with a good chance here.
It's okay. I'll give you a head start if you want to open your browser.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got the browser up, but how about I just quickly take a copy of the first ABN and then we can get cracking. But I have a feeling this is not rigged, right? I've got a chance of winning this one.
Yeah.
Let's find out.
You can try that.
All right, so I'm ready to go. Let's start up fresh. Let's go.
3, 2, 1. I'm gonna kick off the bot now.
Now,
Start.
okay, paste. Do a quick search. Okay, I've got my first
The bot
customer.
has already opened the browser.
Yeah, I'm
Search
pasting
for the
in
first
the first one. Now let's get the status. Copy. I've got to be absolutely smashing it, surely. Main location, Queensland.
You're already done, Tristan.
Sorry?
So the robot has already performed 5 ABN searches and grabbed all the information, dumped that into Excel within 14 seconds.
I got 1. Does that count? Sort of 1 out of 5. That's like a 20%.
Let's count that. Okay. What I want to show is also the email that robot has sent.
So I'm going to keep going just to...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
you can.
go for it. Just to lick my wounds.
This is the success email that robot has sent. This email subject and body has been predefined in one of the configuration files. And here is the attachment. So in this attachment, you can see there are 5 ABN numbers, name, status, and location corresponding to those numbers.
Okay.
So Tristan, what I'm going to do is I'll slow down this process. So it will again give you some chance to catch up with me.
All right. How about
the board.
How about I keep going then? There is an outside chance I might beat you, but
yeah, sure.
You keep. I'm going to keep going.
And apart from that, what I want to show is how the robot performs, and I will highlight each element that robot interacts with.
Sounds good. All right.
So
go for it.
I'm going to start in the slow motion mode.
Okay. Pace. So I'm partway through the third one.
Sure.
Whoops.
Initializing, robot is waiting for the search field, inputting the first ABN number.
Okay, and lots of back and forth between screens for me, and I'm imagining people who are watching this presentation right now would be familiar with this toing and froing between screens. And I keep loading the wrong screen by accident, I guess that's... So I'm just trying to get a bit of flow here. So the status.
So what robot is doing is after entering each ABN number, it is also validating if the number entered is correct or not. Then it is grabbing the entity name, ABN status, the business location, and then checking if the search field still exists. Enters the next ABN number. Again checks whether the page has loaded and it's a correct ABN.
Now once I've done with this, you want me to...
You can send it to myself or
send
even
it
yourself.
to you. Okay, all right. Whoops. Okay, so I've got that one. Now I'm trying to get... So you can see the margin for error that I've got here because I keep going, flicking between screens and going to the wrong screen. So let's copy that. How are you going over there, Yash?
All right,
Am I
so
in with
we
the
are
fighting
almost,
chance?
yeah, we are done with the slow motion
Oh, you finished already,
mode
have
as
you?
well.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'll hit save.
If we see here again in the email,
Yep. Right.
we have received the email for the slow motion mode as well. So the point over here is this use case was only for 5 ABN numbers, but imagine if your employee has to do thousands of ABN number in a month, or even 50 ABN number or 100 ABN number every single day.
Yep.
And maybe replace this ABN number with any other type of data that you grab from PDFs, from emails, from Word documents, or from CRM systems. Then you process that data and then you output it to certain system or certain file. So imagine how much time it can save for employees in your organization.
Basically, in the time it took me to do 5 ABNs, you were able to do the robot in full speed, and then you're able to do it in slow speed, and you still beat me. I did, for what it's worth, I did have to get to the end. It's important for me to finish what I started. So I did send you a copy, but it's pretty amazing to think that if you were to scale that out to hundreds or thousands of transactions, just how much effort, how much time, and in my case, I was a bit of a fat fingers from here and there, but you know how much quality would be improved as part of even just a very basic process.
As you mentioned, Tristan, so there is, even if it is in this simple process, there is a lot of rework involved. So I can give you one example where I worked in my previous company, where there was 90% of rework involved for that process, and we were able to automate that with 0% rework.
Yep. And I guess in this case, if I make a mistake, I can just copy and paste again. But if it was something really serious, like data entry into a banking system or into an insurance platform, the flow and effect could be huge. So I'm hoping everybody listening on to this webinar can really appreciate, how important robotic process automation can be.
Absolutely. I'm sure you didn't like it, Tristan, but over to you.
No, we might need to have a conversation after this webinar. But thank you, Yash, for taking the time to demonstrate the robot for us, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed that. So what does TAS have in place now? And just to give you a bit of an idea of what we can offer to you straight away. So we have highly available infrastructure that has been put in place, and that infrastructure is dedicated to the UiPath suite. And that infrastructure, as I mentioned, because it's highly available, we're able to, in a highly unlikely scenario, we're able to fail over to a totally separate data center through our disaster recovery or our business continuity processes. On top of that, we have UiPath Suite that's also been configured and that has been established to allow single and a multi-tenancy type setup. We also have an established RPA framework on top of that. And that RPA framework, you saw a very brief glimpse of it earlier in our webinar, but that gives us the guidance that we need to make sure that we're producing automation in a repeatable, high quality and concise approach. And that's around how we define requirements, how we enable for you, and then how we then move into operations. But we also have descriptions on how we perform testing and the standards that we need to meet, how we code and how we build and how those standards need to be met. We have an experienced RPA team, and I've introduced you today to Yash, who is one member of that team. And that team, as I mentioned, has experience across multiple industries. We have an end-to-end RPA service offering, and what that basically means is because we are owning the infrastructure for you, and because we are owning the UiPath Suite for you, we will handle the maintenance of that infrastructure, everything from patching through to monitoring, through to license management and license handling of UiPath Suite, but also the vendor management stage. So we work with UiPath to make sure that UiPath is always up to date, always has the latest and greatest features. So that end-to-end service offering really very much is about you just bring your ideas to us, we will automate it for you, and then we will take care of it for you. So it's our accountability to make sure that that service is delivered for you. You will then see the outputs of your processes, and we can also wrap around some reporting so that you can see how successful we are in delivering that for you. So that's the key end-to-end RPA service offering that we can provide. Now, of course, if you wanted to bring your own RPA configuration, we can then work with you to provide managed infrastructure as a service. And that basically means that we would put in place similar infrastructure setups, and then you would put on top your own UiPath or similar configuration. But we do recommend the end-to-end RPA service offering because we are able to handle things for you from the beginning of the process all the way through to the end of the process. And we have a very simple consumption-based approach to how we price that, and it's about you as the customer paying for the time that the robots are used. So we try to make sure that it's fair and reasonable in that regards, so that you're only covering the cost of the utilization of the robot. We do have demonstrated success in a number of areas with run sheet automation. We also internally automate a lot of reporting processes, and we're now working with our other internal teams such as finance to have a look at other areas that they may wish to automate. And we're working with a number of customers on processes that would definitely be reusable across the industry. And where we learn and where we grow one type of process, it then becomes easier and faster to offer that same process automation to our other customers. So what we recommend from here is discuss within your business any processes that may be automated. And you can rewind this webinar back a few minutes and you can have a look at the process selection criteria. But basically think about those high volume, highly transactional processes that could be faster and easier to automate. They will be your low-hanging fruit or your real bang for buck. If you're not sure how to define those processes, just reach out to us. Reach out to Jim Williscroft, who works in our pre-sales department. Jim can put you in touch with us, and we can sit down with you and we can work with you to not only identify those processes, but workshop those processes. As I said earlier, if you don't have documentation in place today, that's okay. We can help you to put that in place. Otherwise, if you have a pretty good understanding of the processes that you want to automate and you have even rudimentary process, something as simple as a checklist or bullet points, you can log on to the service portal, you can go to request services and click on the process improvement category, and you can fill in our robotic process automation catalog item. And in there, that catalog item will ask you some of those questions before, such as how often does the process run and how much time do you spend delivering each process. Now, if you're listening to this and you don't have access to our service portal, that's fine. Jump into tas.business, that's TAS.business, and on that website, you can jump into our robotic process automation page and you can fill in a very quick form there, and that will go through to our team, and they will reach out to you and talk about how we can help you on your RPA journey. But at the end of the day, when in doubt, or if you're unsure, just reach out to us and we will work with you to identify, to assess, and to prioritize your process improvements. Thanks everybody for watching our webinar on robotic process automation. We hope you found it informative. If you'd like to find out more, just navigate to tas.business. Thank you.
Thank you.